to America's Mayor Live on a very, very sad, really a very, very destructive night for America. America is a country based on shared values and ideals. That comes from our greatest president. I think most would agree, except some people who accuse him of being racist and have tried to take his statue down, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln pointed out once very, very dramatically that America is not a country based on one nationality, one religion, one race, one anything. There is a unity in this country, and that unity is around shared ideals. And those ideals emanate from our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Today, in a historic act done for the first time ever, a rogue prosecutor put in office by a man who has spent millions to try to destroy America, a man who's responsible for countless numbers of deaths, records in cities where he put prosecutors of murder, records never seen before in those cities of young people dying, in particular young black men. This prosecutor, who really isn't entitled to the title, isn't entitled to the description of prosecutor, because he has violated his oath time and time again from the moment he came into office. He's made New York City dangerous. He has been probably the primary driver in the fear of crime, which has led to the largest exodus from New York of any city in the country. He began his first day in office saying he wouldn't prosecute armed robbery if somebody was not shot, or he wouldn't prosecute it as a felony, as the law states. He wouldn't prosecute resisting arrest, even though that means it would be a field day on beating up police officers. He wouldn't prosecute any number of crimes. He would opt in favor of not incarcerating whenever possible. Bail was gone for most offenses. And he has presided over a crime wave in New York that New York citizens find frightening. He is a lawless prosecutor. There are no bounds, there are no laws. He disregards at least half of them. He has downgraded felonies to misdemeanor 52% of the time. Crime last year, his first full year, went up 27%. And now he brings a case against the president while we have a president in the White House who was elected by fraud. I'm talking about the fraud in concealing the evidence of hundreds of crimes committed by the president and his crime family and associates, the hard drive, that was deliberately censored in a conspiracy involving the government, the Democrat Party, the media, and Silicon Valley. Unthinkable. A cover-up of unbelievably voluminous and clear evidence of massive crimes on the part of a lawless family for 30 years that was able to capture the White House under false pretenses. So false that somewhere around 20% of the people now say if they were aware of the material covered up by the Democrats and their co-conspirators, they would not have voted for Biden, and Trump would be the president today. With that evidence out there not being acted on, with a president in the White House who is demonstrably a criminal, who's taken money from our worst enemies, and who acts suspiciously in their favor at almost all times, with a son who is guilty of crimes and perversion that it just requires pulling a document out of the hard drive to prove, who hasn't even been questioned, searched, while others have been dragged out in the middle of the night by FBI agents dressed like they were the secret police of a totalitarian state. Before today, this had become a country where you would be foolish to believe it's a country of laws. This has become a country of men and women, certain men and women, who are the dictators. They govern by dictate, they act by dictate, and they commit fascist acts continually. The act of weaponizing the criminal justice system to prosecute your political opponents for crimes that don't exist, or even for crimes that you would not prosecute others for, is the hallmark of a fascist state. That's what happened in Stalin's Russia, in Hitler's Germany. That's what's going on in China. That's what's going on in North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela. That's now going on in the United States. And it's going on rather regularly because Soros has invested enormous amounts of money in placing lawless, fascist type prosecutors in at least 50 states where they have done things like let thousands and thousands of violent rioters go free without any prosecution for destroying billions of dollars worth of property and also doing physical damage and even murder. And now, that prosecutor who really should be prosecuted himself for violating his oath of office and should have been removed if we had a something other than a dictatorial political system in our state, governed by Democrats, for Democrats, and only for the benefit of Democrats. Today, he issued an indictment, leaked it, which is absolutely illegal. I believe there are jail penalties for it. Obviously, nobody related to Trump leaked it. They didn't know about it. So somebody other than Trump committed a crime here. This is the only crime so far that we can be sure of. Somebody gave out an indictment from the government of the city of New York. That was presided over by this rogue district attorney. And the chances that the rogue district attorney had it distributed are about, 100%. Which means we've got a rogue district attorney who, throughout the course of this, has leaked like a sieve. And this isn't like leaking in politics. Leaking from a grand jury is a crime punishable by imprisonment. It's a heck of a lot more serious than any crime he has charged Donald Trump with. And his office has committed that crime. We just don't know who committed it. And it's unthinkable it wasn't done at his direction. Does Fatso think we're stupid? He may be. We're not. He is a disgrace. He will in history be regarded as the man who destroyed the New York District Attorney's Office, a great law enforcement institution. The charges, let's go over them, and you will find out how specious they are. The charges we think he filed, since he has done this with an illegal leak and without providing the indictment. And he will do that for days and days and days in order to hopefully get, from his point of view, maximum damage without President Trump being able to respond definitively to what he's charged with. Another indication that we're in the hands of a fascist district attorney's office. If you're going to indict him, the public can't know. But here's what we think he was indicted for. The main crime is a violation of, I believe, Penal Law 175.05. That's or maybe the other way around, maybe 175.10. I'm not sure which is which. One is a misdemeanor. And the misdemeanor is entering a false record in the books of a company. Now, the statute was intended to apply to accountants and accounting and bookkeeping. This is being applied to a non-disclosure agreement executed between two consenting adults in order to accomplish a mutually beneficial purpose for both. Different, but beneficial. From the point of view of Stormy Daniels, the person making the charges, and let's say the charges are either true or false. Let's say for a moment the charges are true. She decided she wanted the money rather than have to go through the burden of a trial, which would have revealed a rather difficult past, more than likely. Not necessarily, but more than likely. She may have thought it's worth taking the money, not going through the difficulties of a trial. Now, let's say she was lying, which is also quite possible, and I believe is the case. Then she was, doing what people sometimes do, particularly people that are involved in her profession, which is extorting money from rich men. Not unheard of. Sometimes for things they did, and sometimes for things they didn't do, or sometimes for things that are exaggerated. I've seen all three. So you say, well, why would the man pay it if he isn't guilty? Because the charge is the damaging thing, and particularly with your wife and children. And that's the main purpose of the payment. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Except at the very end, after 100 times of repeating that, Cohen repeating it, including to Chris Cuomo and to every reporter imaginable, even under extensive pressure in a 2-hour tape-recorded conversation by Chris Cuomo, in which he tries to lead him to say all the incriminating things about Trump, which he doesn't do, despite the testimony of his lawyer, where he waived the attorney-client privilege, that he insisted and insisted and insisted that this was done on his own in order to protect not only the president, but Melania Trump, and that he did it. And I'll tell you why he did it. He did it to gain favor with the president so he could get into the White House, because he knew that almost everyone around the president disliked him intensely and would almost regularly question, why the heck do you have him around? And the president had a soft spot for him, but certainly no real confidence in him. So he needed something that would ingratiate himself to the president if he was going to get past all of his detractors, which, as far as I can tell, were unanimous. So he makes up this story. However, you begin with the misdemeanor, the filing of a false record. Is it intended to cover a non-disclosure agreement? Doesn't sound that way. When you read the statute and you read the history of it and you read the cases that were prosecuted under it, it's all about false entries in the books and records of a company. It's not about a contract that's negotiated to save reputation, which is what this is. of which there are 1 million of those in America, in New York. Almost every civil case that involves this kind of issue, or issues involving defamation of some kind, or even issues involved with large corporations, have non-disclosure agreements if there's a settlement. And I don't think they're really considered business records. And there is a certain amount of leeway in a non-disclosure agreement because it is intended to protect reputation, that you don't make it easily recognizable. Using different names is rather common. I do not believe this statute has ever been applied to a non-disclosure agreement. If it has, I haven't found it, and it would be very rare. In any event, to see it as a false record deliberately done that way, you got to depend on the testimony of Michael Cohen, who is a pathological liar, as determined by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, who would not put him on the witness stand because they did not want to risk the integrity of their office. Apparently, Bragg has no integrity, nor does he care about the integrity of his office. There are certain witnesses that ethical prosecutors' offices make that determination about. Those are the witnesses who lie after they cooperated. Well, he lied not only after he cooperated, he lied last week when he found out that Costello testified. He said, "I never signed a waiver of the attorney-client privilege," to which Costello responded by showing you the document where he signed his lawyer's affirmation of that. And that document was given to him by U.S. attorneys who wanted his testimony. And when they got his testimony, they threw Cohen out of their office, basically, and didn't use him for any prosecution because he wasn't worthy of belief. If he's not worthy of belief for the Southern District of New York, how does he all of a sudden become worthy of belief by the district attorney's office when the only thing he's done in the interim is lie about another 8 or 10 times, including the one I just told you? This is not a prosecution. This is a political attack. This is what they mean by weaponizing or politically weaponizing the criminal justice system. Now, the last straw here is that this misdemeanor statute, which is hardly something you should use as the first prosecution of a president ever, when you let a president go free within modern memory for having sex in the White House or in the Oval Office with a young girl who was his subordinate, would lead to the firing and possibly prosecution of any executive in America. A woman who he had giving him oral sex while he was on the phone with a congressman, making a mockery of the dignity of the office of president. But then he committed a real crime. We don't have to debate perjury. Perjury is a real crime, something that Bragg doesn't prosecute, and neither do Democrats, right? Because Bill Clinton went scot-free. That wasn't more serious than this. Young girl working in the White House, whose reputation Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did everything they could to destroy, who then turned out to be telling the truth. And then he commits perjury, and this is all a personal matter. And then we're going after Trump, where there's no clear crime. Yeah. Clinton's crime was within the statute of limitations. The allegations against Trump are beyond the statute of limitations. Clinton's crime is prosecuted all the time. It's called perjury. the alleged crime of of um, Trump has never been prosecuted. No one ever done this before. Because in order to get by the statute of limitations, which he actually doesn't succeed in getting by, or to make it more serious, he ratchets it up to a felony by saying that it was done for the purpose of concealing another crime. Well, I don't know what the proof of that is, and it still has a 5-year statute of limitations that has run out. The last transaction here was in 2017. That's more than 5 years ago. So that's barred by the statute of limitations, and the crime is a false is false or illegal in the sense that it's an illegal campaign contribution. Except that the vast majority of scholars and commissioners have taken the view that a payment for another purpose other than political, even though it is political, is not considered a political contribution, particularly where it's a payment to protect personal reputation against this kind of charge. It was exactly the facts, and they were worse in the Edwards situation, and he was acquitted. And since then, the commissioners have been pretty clear that this kind of payment would not be considered a campaign contribution for purpose of prosecution under that statute. So he's latching his misdemeanor onto a federal crime that most federal experts believe doesn't exist. And not only that, where and how does he get the jurisdiction as a state prosecutor to utilize a federal statute? I mean, even the most crooked New York judge would have to throw that out. Also, here is the irony of ironies. Once again, just like they falsely charged Donald Trump with Russian collusion, which now has been admitted by all, even begrudgingly, including the 51 prostitutes that signed the letter saying that the hard drive was Russian disinformation. It's now been shown that the Russian collusion allegation was entirely and absolutely false. Well, let's put it another way. It was a frame up. Hillary Clinton paid at least $1.1 million to a firm to have Steele produce his phony document, which is clearly oppo political research. The purpose of the payment was not personal. The purpose of the payment was political. The purpose of the payment was to get scurrilous material, false, on Trump, and either get him out of the race or use it to defeat him, that he was colluding with the Russians. That's exactly the crime but actually committed that Bragg is trying to prosecute. It's a false record because she paid that as legal fees to hide the illegal campaign contribution. That was really a campaign contribution because it was payment for research for the campaign. And she's not being prosecuted again after getting away with destroying 33,000 emails while they're fighting with him over documents that were kept secure at Mar-a-Lago. And the question is, should they be in the president's possession or theirs? So I don't know, but I think you're able to see that we have passed the point of no return, haven't we? Or you want to use another analogy, we've crossed the Rubicon and we have ceased being a country that can be described as a country of laws. We've become a country of dictators, Democrat dictators, who decide who's going to be prosecuted, make it up, and who's not going to be prosecuted, and let them get away with some of the worst crimes, including crimes that are very close to treason. It's a very, very sad day. I don't know what's going to happen now. I would say within a week or so, he's going to have to bring President Trump in for an arraignment. He's eventually going to have to release that document. If the document were helpful to him, if it revealed other crimes that we don't know about, or it'd be released. It's like that manifesto in Tennessee by the transgender murderer. If that manifesto contained things that were harmful to Republicans, or showed that it was done somehow by a white supremacist, or it had been leaked, like this grand jury fact was leaked. So this indictment is not being put out because they want to get a week or so of speculation before I get a chance to dissect it the way I just did, because they want to cast doubt on whether my analysis is correct or not. I assure you it is. They're pretend prosecutors. They're corrupt pretend prosecutors. I was really a prosecutor, and I have them figured out a long time ago. If I'm the U.S. attorney now, I'd open an investigation of them for obstruction of justice. I consider framing an innocent human being one of the worst crimes you can commit. The Democratic Party has been doing that for the last 5 years in trying to frame not just a citizen, but the President of the United States. And in that case, doing great damage to our republic. And it has to come to an end. This has to come to an end. This is not just a political matter now. This goes to the continuation and the integrity of our form of government and our way of life. We're a country that's built on the equal application of the law. We don't have the equal application of the law any longer, and we're foolish to believe that we do. If he can be prosecuted, you can. And you have. It's been going on for a lot longer than we know. Remember the focus on the conservatives by the IRS under Obama? You don't think Obama is part of this corruption? The prince? You don't keep on a vice president like Biden if you're a person of ethics, do you? I mean, Biden's unethical and illegal activity had to be well known to the CIA and the FBI when he was doing it. Otherwise, they're not the CIA and the FBI. They had to know that he was taking bribes from Ukraine. If they didn't, they must have been drunk or asleep or corrupt themselves doing something else. Biden didn't do anything about it. When Biden found out that the son worked for the biggest crook in Ukraine, he didn't do anything about it. What does that tell you about Biden? And what does that tell you about Obama and Biden? So what happens now? Let's just get technical for a moment. So the next step is he has said through his lawyer that he'll come to New York voluntarily. Now, if he didn't, they would have to extradite him, believe it or not, because states are sovereignties. You can't just go arrest somebody in another state. Governor DeSantis has said he will not extradite him. And do you know he's got a legal basis for it? I don't know if he looked into this carefully, or he was being flippant, or he was being defensive, or he's looked into it with his attorney general. He does have a hell of a good attorney general. You can turn down extradition to a country, for example, where you can't get a fair trial. I argued a case like that once in the Second Circuit, and it was an IRA prisoner. And he didn't want to be returned to England because he said that in England, member of the IRA couldn't get a fair trial. And the judge ruled that it fell under the political exception to extradition. You don't have to extradite someone if they're going to be politically persecuted. He was eventually overturned on the facts, not the law. Would it be possible for a Florida judge to reach the conclusion that Trump could not get a fair trial in New York? Would it be possible for him to reach the conclusion that this was an entirely political and therefore invalid prosecution? Yes, he could. Then it would be taken up through the state court system in Florida and eventually to the Supreme Court. I have not heard that President Trump wants to do that, but if the governor is serious, the threat that he won't extradite is more than a hollow threat. There's law that supports it, and it would be a heck of a hearing. You got an awful lot of proof that this is a political prosecution. If it is, you can turn down extradition. I don't think that's going to happen. You can see, as a lawyer, I wish it would. Love to argue it. So I think the next step is that President Trump shows up sometime next week in New York. Secret Service says they're not going to let him out of their sight. New York City Police Department, despite Bragg, is not going to push that. Most New York City cops voted for Trump. Trump is the first president the police union ever endorsed. They despise Bragg, despise him. I mean, I think if they could arrest him for violating the law, because he does it every day when he lets people out, they would. So they'll do their duty, but they sure as heck aren't going to make it more difficult than necessary on the man that they admire a lot more than the lawless prosecutor. Ultimate risk is his disregard for the law. When he is taking felonies down to misdemeanors at a rate of 52%, it's their cases that he's destroying, meaning the police officers. Police officers, sometimes make those arrests under risk of dying. And all of a sudden, the criminal's back out on the street 3 hours later, sticking his at the cop. Called turnstile justice in New York. It's one of the major reasons we have so much crime. It's one of the major reasons we have bold crimes now. You see them on television, people thrown on the subway, elderly people beaten over the head, little autistic child beaten up, stores broken into, police doing nothing because they're being held back. That's all part of the Soros, Bragg destruction of the American inner city. So we become part of Soros's dream, Obama's dream, Klaus Schwab's dream of one world. They all hate American nationalism. They want to do away with it. They want to do away with the shared values that Abraham Lincoln thought was so important to holding America together. They want us to be part of one world based on, we're just about there as a communist country under Biden. We redistribute wealth in massive amounts. We pay people not to work. He governs most often by dictate rather than legislation. Some of which has been reversed by the courts, but not all of it. Democratic leaders or leaders of a constitutional republic do not govern by dictate. Who governs by dictate? You tell me, Ted. Who governs by dictate? By definition, who governs by dictate? You know how devoted I am to logic. So who, and particularly linguistic logic, who governs by dictate? What do they call them?
Chances are dictator.
Boy, that was good.
I was nervous. I was nervous.
He's so proud of himself.
I was so nervous.
Governed by dictate.
I was going to ask our viewer.
Dictator. Like Hochul, Cuomo, Murphy, Who's your governor's name without a brain?
Gretchen Whitmer
Gretchen
now being
Whitmer.
named as a potential 2024 candidate.
That would be fine. They haven't had a brain in the White House in 3 years. Might as well send her there. Dr. Maria would like to make some comments. You want to come over here and do it? So you can be heard? Let Dr. Maria replace you for a few moments, and then we're going to be on until 9:30 tonight because we have a special edition, and then I think we're going to be on with Greg Kelly.
Yes, you're going to be on
Newsmax.
On Newsmax. Mayor, I've been thinking about this because this is devastating. I did think about the possibility that there would be an indictment because Alvin Bragg ran on it, even though he knows it'll probably be dropped or a judge will intervene. He could go around to his lefty friends at their cocktail parties and say, I'm the one that indicted Trump.
He must eat a lot of hors d'oeuvres at those cocktail parties.
Yeah.
He's really fat.
Chipmunk Bragg, or they call him, or Trump calls him. But no, listen. So I thought that was a possibility and that could be the reason. But listen, there's something very funny going on with the banks, right? The lefty radical lefts want to digitize our monetary currency. That way they control it. They can take things out of your bank account if it's digitized. We have this unholy alliance between China, Iran, and Russia. But now Brazil is in the mix with China, and they're going to change their currency to the Chinese yen. There's all this stuff going on. Is this
China
done?
owns our president.
China owns our president. Every network is talking about the Trump indictment. Is any reporter asking questions about any of these other areas? Not tonight. Maybe not for the next week. Is this something they all plan to do? Because it is unprecedented. Trump claims he didn't know about that payment. There is some evidence that Cohn did this on his own, took out a loan, did it on his own. And this happened in 2016.
There are 3 witnesses against him saying that's
right.
what happened.
This happened in 2016. Why now? Why now? Is this the biggest distraction for them to do yet another radical left globalist play? I'm telling you, we're in the fight of our lifetime.
So this at least is sort of like their pandemic for this election. And they may be a few, maybe they can't get one big pandemic, but they can get 4 or 5 of these mini pandemics.
They hyped up that pandemic. In election committees changed laws they didn't have the authority to do.
Massive numbers of people killed.
The fraud happened, and Biden's in office.
And Fauci probably made millions.
Yeah, Fauci has secret royalty payments to this day. He's hiding.
Well, doctor, the
it's
theory,
just a thought,
but it's more than a thought. It's a hypothesis that that good detectives use to investigate. It's certainly worthy of investigation.
So you have such an intelligent audience. You always have on your radio show Monday through Friday,
you and I were
3 to 4.
You and I were shocked the first time we did Uncovering the Truth.
Yes,
weren't we?
Our show on Sundays, we love our listeners. They are very, very bright and very intuitive.
And they challenge us.
So I have a challenge to your audience. Look at all the factors. Tell us what you're thinking. Write to Rudy, make comments here. We want to know what you're thinking because a lot of times you guys have good evidence out there.
I'm something right now.
Yeah, I can't read all of them. They're coming so fast, but maybe Ted could read it.
One says Biden isn't Biden, I think meaning that he's, he doesn't have any brains.
I did read somebody just wrote, we are frustrated, and I relate to you. I empathize with you.
He's not really a president.
I've never thought I would see this.
Well, someone says here, President Trump has guardian angels looking over him, and they will protect him. The Marxists have taken over. You're the traitor, Rudy.
Oh, somebody get that Hal, what's his name, and get him off this. I mean, this is a serious topic. Rudy loves this country.
Part of the communist playbook.
Yeah. All right. Well,
how can you do this? How can you condemn an innocent man?
Thank you for allowing me to say that comment, Rudy. I'll let Ted take back his job.
Yeah, I mean, how can you do it? I mean, do you have any real doubts how evil Biden is? Didn't he just play that yesterday or the day before when the three little children were killed and the three teachers and administrator? And he comes out at a solemn moment like that and makes an inane joke about his wife and about ice cream. And then goes on his political bull about gun control, as if you can control the behavior of a person who's mentally ill or a criminal. I mean, again, we'll use linguistic analysis. People who are serious criminals who commit murder and people who are mentally ill and commit murder are by nature not controlled by laws. Right. If they're not controlled by laws and they're not going to obey laws about murder, they're going to obey gun control laws. You've got to be deliberately putting that out again as a political dodge because you don't know, because you don't want to do anything about protecting us. Because for some reason, the Democrat Party almost exclusively has become the party of criminals. Would you like to figure out who the criminals vote for? You think criminals haven't voted for me? And if I got the vote of a criminal, you know what I would do? I'd shove it down their throat. I'm looking at Fatso on television now. He looks like a doofus anyway. But in any event, he was an assistant U.S. attorney. But I mean, this convoluted prosecution. If you are going to indict the president of the United States for the first time ever, you got to do better than this, and you got to do better than the garbage they have in Georgia. I don't even know what it is, but that conversation with that attorney general was completely justified. They're ignoring the fact that the attorney general, Raffensperger, who said the election was perfect, got a report 5 days after the election that the election had at least 48 or 49 major irregularities and was a joke. Now, he didn't put that report out and refute it. He hid it until it was discovered by John Solomon 2 years after the election. So all during the time that he's doing perfect, and condemning Trump, he never puts out his report. What Trump was talking about with him was simple. There were about 200,000 votes that were in doubt, in serious doubt, for which there were witnesses and other pieces of evidence. He was basically saying, hey, liar, because he's lying about how good the election was. You can't even find 11,000 votes? And think about this. They would keep relying on, oh, we recounted the votes, because they recounted the same phony votes. They never once would allow anybody on behalf of Trump to look at the paper. Now, why wouldn't they let you look at the paper there or in Philadelphia or anywhere else? Because a lot of the paper was phony. And you can compare the phony paper to the official paper. The state contracted with a stationer to print the ballots. And you can compare them. So that case is a jerk-off case. And then the one over Mar-a-Lago, compared to what Biden did, this has been from day one an attempt to frame him because they're so afraid of him. And now we know why. Because long before this, they were running a corrupt government, making a fortune, taking money out of Ukraine like it was a piggy bank. Even worse than that, getting money from our worst enemy, China. I mean, the Bidens got over $30 million from China. So what do we have, Ted? We got any calls? We have any texts?
We're getting a lot of text. Our chat room is full. Let's take the phone from your left. Mayor, you want
Banana
I'll bring up the
Republic.
chat.
Somebody says Banana Republic. It's show business at this point. I don't know exactly what that means. This person is very scared that it could happen to any Republican. Trump did great things and was making things greater beyond anyone's expectations. Dems got so scared they had to cheat in the election to prevent another scary Trump win. That's from Kevin. Then here's another one. The military must defend us from corruption. No, that's not what we're all about. I should tell you, the president doesn't believe that. I saw him under very interesting situation, be very strong about that.
That's, can you hand me the phone, Mayor?
Corruption, too many liberals in positions of power. There's something to that. This one here?
Yep. Make sure it's unlocked.
Oh, yeah, we got a bunch of calls.
Is that unlocked? Oh, awesome. Thanks for joining us. Give us a call at 646-306-8836. That's 646-306-8836, and we will start taking them
There's
in
There's a message
moment.
about God, but I can't quite understand it. Our allies are laughing their asses off over our corrupt government. Oh, there's a lot to that, boy. The corruption in this country is so big, only God can help us. How do these young people, can you move it up just a little? This is from Arcalis. I won't give their last names, although I see them there. How do these young people that shoot and kill members at churches and school get the expensive weapons to carry out the deed? There's a target on religion. Now, that is certainly a very, very reasonable hypothesis that is being squelched in this investigation in Tennessee, isn't it? And you have to suspect that covering up the manifesto has something to do with that. So I did my show today and did a little research, and there's a lot of evidence of a considerable amount of violence, not just against transgender people, but by transgender people. In fact, the governor of Arizona had to fire her her press secretary, I believe it was, for making threats, and that transgender people should rise up against. And basically, she had a gun, and then of course, I mean, you say, well, that's unfair to say that. That's unfair to say that. But they're having a rally this weekend, and the theme of it is vengeance. Imagine if a group of white supremacists had a rally and the theme was vengeance. Wouldn't blame that on Trump and the things he said. Well, how about blaming this on Biden and the crazy things they allow in our schools, like mutilating children without the permission of parents? How about somebody reveal the fact that the attorney general's son-in-law makes a fortune over getting contracts to teach our young kids to doubt their genders and help them and guide them to other genders? He makes money off that. And then the attorney general does just corrupt things like threaten that parents are going to be terrorists. Don't think there's a connection between the two? I'm going to give you a piece of wisdom I learned a long time ago, and it probably helped me a lot in bringing all the successful prosecutions that I did. It's real simple. Follow the money. And in the Biden administration, follow the money. You think Garland isn't affected by the fact that his son-in-law makes a fortune of gender change, gender advice, questioning these kids at a way too early age about, are they sure they're boys or girls? Like everything else, it's under these crooks, like climate change. It's a damn multi-billion-dollar industry. Like the whole pandemic. We're taking vaccine after vaccine after vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. Not curing, doesn't stop the disease. That's a vaccine? Why? Follow the money. They were making billions on the vaccine. And now we have secret covered up royalties to Fauci that nobody seems to even ask about. We got some more calls?
We're getting calls, Mayor.
Okay. Should I put this on?
Yes, let's put those on,
All right.
and we are
I
going
put it on
to.
my ears, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
those go for the ears. Vince, are you there? We have Vince in Indiana.
Ooh, Vince, how are you, Vince?
Mayor, I'm a fan of yours.
Well, thank you, Vince. I appreciate that. What
I
do you?
just wanted to ask. I just wanted to ask you to explain to us how other countries ban George Soros, even his own home country of Hungary, and yet he has a lot of freedom here to do whatever he wants. I don't understand how that works.
Well, I don't know that anyone's ever seriously had the courage to investigate him. He spread so much money around. He owns 40 to 50 of the district attorney, virtually owns them. I mean, and it's no coincidence that those are the district attorneys who let all the protesters go free. Now, do you want to hear another interesting coincidence?
Yeah.
Another interesting.
Yeah.
So Soros is the biggest funder to Antifa. He's the biggest funder to Black Lives Matter. He's the biggest funder to Biden. He picked Harris as the vice president, and he's the biggest funder to 50 to 60 DAs. You don't think he's calling the shots? When he talks,
Yeah, I don't know.
when he talks, they jump over in hoops because they want his money. And they let criminals go free. They prosecute who he wants. He did the same thing in Eastern Europe. And what's his goal? His goal is to destroy our country. He tells you that. He hates American nationalism.
Mhm.
What the hell are you doing here if you hate American nationalism, Soros? You are.
Is he a communist or what?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's a communist. Yeah. I think
he's
I think ultimately he's a communist or doesn't care if we become communist as long as we become one world.
Yeah, one world.
But he's gonna be sitting on top. Remember, communism is like an aristocracy. The communists are all rich and everybody else is poor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Everyone will be equal except he gets to be in charge, right?
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine he's been investigated like Trump. Just think about the following. Trump was a businessman in New York for 20 years, right? They investigated 20 years of his life. And this is the best they could come up with. He must have been a pretty honest guy. I swear to God, there are not too many businessmen at his level that I would investigate for 20 years and I'd come up with some bullshit charge like this.
Yeah, I think he was squeaky clean.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know New York and the construction industry. This is the best they can do. I happen to know that was true because I was the mayor during much of that period and the U.S. attorney before it. And I know Trump and I know his strengths and his weaknesses. And one of his strengths is he follows the law. He tries hard to follow the law. And I don't know why people have gotten they have a reputation. I mean, he's not even close to Biden. I mean, well, Biden is an unusual case. I mean, the guy is like a habitual lawbreaker.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Martin orders.
Who do we have there?
That was the background. So thank you, Vince. That's Vince in Indiana.
Vince, thank you, Vince.
We're getting a lot of calls this evening, Mayor.
Well, I think this is a very significant evening for America. This is as or more significant than the Saturday Night Massacre during Watergate. I would say more significant because that didn't lead to the kind of permanent, because now it's permanent destruction of our system of justice, where we have two standards. That's not justice any longer when there are two standards. Our boast that we're a country of laws, not of men, is now a lie.
Mayor, you ready for another call? We have Tracy in St. Charles, Missouri.
Hello, Tracy.
Hey, Rudy, it's Tracy Ellis at Real Talk Radio Network. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Tracy.
Well, as you know, we love you. We're honored to have you on our station Monday through Friday. And I just wanted to call because I just think this is insane that we're sitting here watching a former president indicted for something so ridiculous
And
that
it is, Tracy.
we
I
all
mean,
know it's a joke.
and you do great work in keeping freedom of speech alive.
Well, thanks to people like you helping us.
And you too. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do the programming you do. I mean, Tracy runs a network, and they they've got the guts to tell the truth on the network. They're part of the, what is it, maybe 8 or 10% of the media where you can get the truth about what's happening. And in modern America, people try to wipe you out when you do that. You see what they did to Newsmax recently, right? With Direct TV. They're finally able to get it back, but I mean, they're constantly gunning for them. You've got the same problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a shame, but you speak truth anymore and everybody wants to shut you down. I said, common sense has left the building.
So tell
that's
people
the problem.
about your radio stations, where they are.
Real Talk Radio
Mhm,
Network
mhm.
is in St. Louis, Missouri, and
Yep.
we're 24/7 news talk, but obviously we're conservative. And they're going to hear the truth. We have Dr. Eric Naputi on every morning, and the Kel Brazil show. We have Peggy Hubbard, who ran for U.S. Senate twice in Illinois. She does phenomenal. And former Missouri Senator Brian Nieves, Victor Nieves. Of course, we have you, Matt Walsh, and Jovan Hutton Pulitzer, and Charlie Kirk. So we have a great Monday through Friday lineup.
You do. There's nobody that knows more about those paper ballots than Jovan Pulitzer. Nobody.
Yeah.
He knows
Yep,
them
you love
backwards,
Joe.
and he knows that backwards and forwards. And you want to know about stuff in the ballot box? Talk to him.
Well, because the two of you fought together trying to get
Yep.
something done. And that's the frustration for myself and all Americans. Even I don't watch any news outlets anymore, to be honest with you, on television, except Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker is phenomenal. But even Tucker, he touched on the videos of what happened on January 6th. And then even that kind of got shut down and quiet again. So you're like, even he's being censored, to a point.
Well, Fox isn't Fox anymore.
No.
It isn't what we knew 4 or 5 years ago. It's now, it isn't CNN and it isn't MSNBC or some of the others, but it's not.
Praise God.
Yeah, but it's not Fox, and it makes big compromises.
Because money rules everything now,
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts, Rudy, on what do you think is happening with all of these train derailments all over the U.S. We even had
Dr. Maria and I were discussing that today. I mean, it's just a little too much, isn't it?
Yeah, I never heard about this stuff, and now it's every day.
I mean, it could be the terrible condition that we've let the trains descend into, or it could be some kind of an attempt to disrupt us. I mean, you can't put anything past the Chinese, right? Look,
and again, we're hearing little talk about it in the media.
Well, of course not. I mean, my goodness, you might have to draw a conclusion and do something about it.
Right.
I mean,
right.
But I don't know. Has Biden ever mentioned New Palestine? I know he's never gone there.
I haven't heard him mention it.
I think he may have snuck it in once. But can you imagine that? And what about last night? I mean, or the night before, when he came out and did the thing after the death of
Disgusting.
About ice cream and his wife. I mean, I can't tell you what I wanted to do to him.
Yeah, that was a disgrace to our country. And can you imagine to be one of the family members who lost a child or their spouse or mother that day, to hear the leader of our country come out and speak like that and laugh and be talking about ice cream at such a serious time in our nation?
And do you think they would be ignoring the background of this killer if it were a white male?
Of course not. No. And they would be releasing the manifesto immediately if it were a white
imagine if the
conservative.
manifesto said something about, bad about Biden, or something good about fascism or Nazism or something. Oh my goodness! Wow. But
Yeah, it'd be a whole
look,
other level.
and also I am sufficiently suspicious now to say if they're not releasing it, it must create problems for them. Otherwise, they'd put it
Right.
out. Otherwise, if it were pure vanilla, they'd put it right out.
What I saw today said that the FBI had it now. So
Oh, well, now we may never see
who
it.
knows? Yeah, who knows how long
The
they'll
FBI,
be
the-
fat on
the
whoever
F-
come out.
You mean the Biden State Police? If the Biden State
Exactly.
Police have it, I mean, look at look at the hard drive. They let him get elected.
Exactly.
They let him get elected knowing he's been taking money for 30 years. They let him
Exactly,
get
Rudy, but
elected knowing that his son had child pornography.
now you can't make this stuff up, and that's the frustration of most Americans is we feel like we're doing our all, like you and Dr. Maria, to put everything out there. We're doing it real talk, but nothing happens. There's never any consequences for the people doing the bad in our country. And I mean, you look at what's happening with now in the Senate, and everybody talks about what they're going to do. And I respect Tim Jordan so much, but nothing happens. We just keep talking about it, but we never see results.
Yeah, I mean, it moves very, very slowly, and it's in their favor when it moves slowly. Justice delayed is justice denied, and the more they can create delays. I mean, this is what I think they're doing here. So they file the indictment, they don't put it out. We can't analyze really completely. We can theorize on what's in it, and I think I know what's in it, but we can't analyze it completely. So for a week or so, they get away with our not being able to prove it's a piece of junk. And during that week, they can really prejudice people. If that
And they
indictment,
can,
if that indictment were damning, they'd put it out.
yeah, and they can get in our heads and get us not focused on other things and focusing on this. There's always an agenda.
Yep.
And Americans have woke up, and I think that's their frustration is all the things that used to work no longer are working because we're all waking up to who these people really are. And my heart goes out to President Trump and his family. They have,
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says about him. He has sacrificed everything and he did not need to. He had a beautiful life. So, I just pray for them every day because they don't deserve what they've went through.
That's very beautiful. And you're absolutely right. And thank you very, very much. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it immensely. Thank you.
Have a great
We'll be in
night.
touch. God bless.
All right.
Terrific woman.
Bye-bye.
Terrific, terrific, terrific station too. Doing God's work. Doing God's work. And it's doing God's work to fight for and preserve the First Amendment and free speech. And that's what she does. Real talk. So we've got somebody. Let's see what else we have there. Update on Nashville shooting. Can we go back to that? Because I would like to say a few things about the Nashville shooting. Authorities refuse to release manifesto, press ignoring key details. Of course. I mean, really? Did you expect anything different? Did you expect anything different? Of course not. This crime was committed by a protected group or a person who's a member of a protected group. So you're not going to get the details of this crime because it might I don't know what it might do, but I mean we really are entitled to know how violent does this I think it's no longer a mental illness, it's a mental disorder, or at least what comes from it, which emerges in the vast majority of cases. And let me get the definition of it correct. And that's gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria refers to psychological distress that results from an incongruence between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity. And that would, of course, fit the definition of this woman. And it then gives out the diagnosis. I would imagine as you look at some of her behavior, you will see that in just the notes that we do have. And then we do know, just to tie it up a little tighter, that she was under treatment by a psychiatrist or a psychologist for a mental disorder, I think it was described as. So we have to assume it was the mental disorder that accompanies a large percentage of people who are transgender, which is gender dysphoria. Now, here's the question. When you see what she did, when you look at some of the tweets that have now been taken down of calls to violence, when you look at what the secretary to the governor of Arizona did and got fired for, and when you look at something even broader, the weekend gathering for vengeance by one of the main transgender groups, you are entitled to have an investigation of these groups to see what is the tendency toward violence. You look at the Proud Boys. They have so many FBI informants. It would be hard for them to be violent, wouldn't it? What do they have 16 now in the Capitol with them? Pretty hard to be violent when you got that many FBI informants, unless the FBI informants are spurring on the violence. I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past Gray and his group of whatever the hell they are, people who have ruined one of the great law enforcement organizations in history. At least they ruined the upper ranks of it. And of course, the average and local FBI agent is not affected by this. But at that very top, they got their special people who act more like the Stasi with the secret police in East Germany. That's what they remind me of. And the way in which they carry out arrests, they look more like the Stasi than the FBI. Never remember FBI in white collar cases going in with military gear and stormtrooper type gear to arrest Roger Stone, or Michael Cohen even. He may be a big liar, but he sure as heck isn't violent. What's the point of that other than to try and tar and feather these people, because it's all political. The FBI has become a political enforcement arm of the Biden Democrat Party, as the IRS was for Obama and is for Biden. They show up at Matt Taibbi's home the day after he testifies, and he doesn't owe money to the government. The IRS doesn't make house calls. You're going to be naive as hell not to see what's going on here. The IRS, I think, was corrupted well before the FBI, and that's why they want to put 80,000 agents there. There'll be more of Biden's secret police. And then they want, as Dr. Maria was pointing out, one of the dangerous things of all, they want to have like digitized control over your money. So then if they say you owe them money, they just take it out. They don't send you a bill and they got to fight for it. So you get a chance to prove you don't owe it. They make mistakes as often as they're right. Maybe they make more mistakes than they're right. They're not God. And the corruption of the IRS goes back, well into the Obama administration. A lot of this corruption goes back into the Obama administration. I really do think if we had an investigation of this, we'd get a very different picture of the phony prince. Now, maybe he's a product of Chicago. Hmm? What do you think? Go back to how he got the house and how he's making so much money. He likes money, doesn't he? Likes the good life. For a guy who was trained by Saul Alinsky in classic communism, boy, he likes wealth a lot, doesn't he? But not necessarily for you and me. Certainly not for Republicans. Let's see. I love looking at this here. Banana Republic. President Trump indicted by Soros-backed DA equals Banana Republic. Another person says allegations against Trump are way beyond statute of limitations. Everything is a cover-up. Everything is a cover-up, and these confused, drugged up. You went too fast on that one. And these confused, drugged up. I mean, in New York, in New York, I argued against this for years. Come on, let's legalize marijuana. It'll cut it down. What? Why in God's name would it cut it down? So now we've legalized marijuana. We have 3 legal shops and over 1,000 illegal ones that we didn't have before. And the amount of marijuana use is up, skyrocket. But of course, because it's intertwined with the other drugs, the amount of all the use of all the others is way up, skyrocketing. And the worst thing of all, we like the rest of the country, are setting records for overdose because they lace marijuana as well as other drugs with fentanyl and kill people. Thank you, Mayor Adams, who is a big proponent of legal recreational use of marijuana, but obviously is so damn incompetent, he has only gotten 3 legal shops up and doesn't seem to know how to close down the 1,000 illegal ones. Because he's a Democrat. Democrats can't govern. Don't you know that? Haven't you noticed how incompetent they are? They live in a unrealistic world that's warped. And when you apply that to practical endeavors, you end up being a little Pete Buttigieg who can't figure out the supply chain, won't go to Palestine. I saw him in Palestine. Boy, he didn't want to deal with those people. He's much better than them. Oh, yes, he's Pete Buttigieg. I've had a very good education. I mean, I have such a good education. That's why I could be a do-nothing mayor of South Bend and did nothing as mayor of South Bend. But I became secretary of, let me see, what am I secretary? He goes to work so little he probably doesn't know. I've actually heard that occasionally he goes to the Interior Department by mistake.
Mayor, he looked so out of place.
You were there.
I was there. And
is it really true? Is it really true that 3 or 4 times he showed up at Interior thinking he was the Secretary of the Interior? Because he doesn't know what the Secretary of Transportation does?
He certainly doesn't have a good idea between trains, between planes, everything else. He hasn't done one thing right.
Sounds like his boss.
Oh yeah, Biden.
Yeah.
Well, he got the job by dropping out of the presidential race, isn't that right?
And endorsing Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that Buttigieg ever had a chance of winning, but they were splitting up the vote enough to give it to Sanders.
There was a time in which Harris was the leading candidate, and everybody thought she'd be a great president. Now, they're afraid to get rid of Mr. Demented because they think Harris is worse. How can you be worse than a demented old man who sold out to China? Well, maybe, I don't know about her. I don't have any evidence that Kamala Harris sold out to China. I do have evidence that she somehow talks like she's a teenager and she giggles all the time, which is a little unnerving. She speaks in non sequiturs. The one about country. This is, I think, absolutely true. We are a country because we are a country.
What is that?
Okay, Kamala. Exactly what were you trying to convey?
Is that how she laughs?
You can hear in the background sometimes.
Well, Mayor, busy night. Lots of we may have hit some records with our chat room.
How did Pete Buttigieg get the job? He dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Biden. I see that. Yeah, I think that's a repetition of me. You're damn right they're beyond the statute of limitations. But you know, I didn't recognize. Someone called me earlier and reminded me of something that I've forgotten. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to Republicans. You can prosecute a Republican for what they did wrong forever. It only applies to Democrats and only registered Democrats. This is what Democrats have done to get more people to register as Democrats. If you're an independent, the prosecutor will flip a coin on the statute of limitations. If you're a Republican, no statute of limitations, you get prosecuted. If you're a Democrat, statute of limitations, no problem. If you're an independent, they flip a coin, but they get to call the coin heads, tails, and you do not get a chance to examine the coin, just like we never got a chance to examine one single of the millions and millions of ballots that were cast for the man who got 85 million votes, although he couldn't get 8 people to show up at a rally.
Remember those rallies? Remember the rallies in 2020 for Biden where he had the big circles?
Yeah, the big circles, and they
They were
weren't.
still only 8 circles.
Yeah, and they kept moving the cameras and moving the people around to the circles. Like on one side, then they moved people to the other side.
Make it look a little full.
Over, and he was walking around like confused, like where am I going? Now he's completely confused. You see the one the other day, he walks the wrong way, and then and then how about the guy they picked up on the microphone who tells them where to go? Go up to the blue line, cross the blue line, go across the blue line, and now step up to the the red line, the red line, the red line. Oh. You think I really do want to know, and I'm going to put in a Freedom of Information Act request if they have to feed him. What do you think?
A FOIA request for what?
Do they feed Biden? Can he take?
What do you think he had?
Is he capable of negotiating the food into his mouth?
So is there a full-time chef at the White House? Is there a full-time chef at the White House?
Of course there is, yeah.
And staff?
Of course.
And so there's someone that, so if he were to have.
Maybe he has a feeder. You know how kings used to have tasters?
Yeah.
Maybe the president has a feeder. We're going to find out years from now who the feeder was. I don't think Jill would do it.
Mayor,
no reason, and I'm not being nasty, but I just don't have a feeling that she would do it. She got annoyed with him the other day when he wasn't listening to her. You know, he's married to Dr. Jill Biden. Did you know that he pointed that out the moment he came out after the children were killed? I'm married to Dr. Jill Biden. I'm married to Dr. Jill Biden. I have a lot of ice cream upstairs. I have lots of ice cream. I really like ice cream. Ice cream is really good. And
that's what he was joking about, of course, right before that.
I have a lot. Yeah, I could take you upstairs, and I got plenty of ice cream, vanilla mostly.
So he made those. Well, Mayor, we are now 20 minutes over.
We're not in stock. This is official time because we said we would do a 1.5 hour special tonight because of the unfortunate circumstances that have happened to our country. And of course, I feel terrible for the president. And I don't go for this former president thing. And I'm going to tell you, I never called President Clinton. I played golf with President Clinton. It was always President Clinton. President Clinton, would you like a cigar? President Clinton said, I don't smoke cigars anymore, but Mayor, I'd be really pleased if you had a cheap cigar. I just chew on it. And I said, Mr. President, I do not have cheap cigars. And he said, well, do you have a small one? I said, for you, I got a beautiful one. So I took it out, I opened it up, I gave it to him, I cut it. And for 2 or 3 holes, he chewed on it. And everybody else, myself, Joe Torre, not Mike Bloomberg didn't smoke, but myself and Joe were smoking cigars. And about the 3rd hole, he said, Mayor, maybe I should have a cigar. I haven't had one in a long time. You have a lighter? I said, sure I do, but let me give you, another one now. Because I didn't give you one of my best ones. But I actually had given him a good one, but it was all chewed up. It looked awful. So I gave him another cigar. I cut it. I gave it to him. By the time we were finished, he smoked 5 of my cigars. At the very end. I didn't mind. It was, look, I told you what he did. And I have a mixed view of him as a president. But more, it's the personal problems that he has that are the issues. And I guess compared to Biden and Obama, he wasn't all that bad a president. I certainly didn't like the direction he took the country, but you could talk to him, you could reason with him. He was never really illogical like they are. I don't see him taking the troops out before the civilians and getting all the civilians killed like numbnuts. And his numbnuts, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who obviously had to approve that. And I don't see him giving Bagram up 400 miles from China. So there are a bunch of things. And when it turned out that it backfired, he got rid of Hillary Care 1, 2, 3. So, and there are things I could tell you about. I think Clinton bears some responsibility for bin Laden becoming reckless, because he did not discipline him the way he should. He didn't react to the bombings that bin Laden did, including an act of war against the United States with sufficient force. He bombed empty fields, essentially. And I believe he bears some responsibility for that. Although I'd never hold anyone responsible for September 11. That was just a horrendous act of mad terrorism. But I do hold him responsible for not disciplining and maybe containing and killing bin Laden when he could much earlier. Which I attribute to the typical Democrat minimizing evil, minimizing danger, minimizing communism. I thought he handled the Middle East horribly and extended the problems there almost indefinitely with the way he empowered a mass murderer. But, presidents have made horrendous mistakes and then have done some really good things. This is the first president that hasn't done anything good. He follows what Gates told us we would get. The man has never made a correct decision about foreign policy in his entire life. It's uncanny. But he still has kept that record going. And Gates proves to be a prophet, doesn't he? It's a shame for our country. It's a shame for our young people. So we're going to stay with this indictment thing, into tomorrow, and you come back with us tomorrow. But I had intended, if this hadn't happened, to really do quite a review of the murder, and both from the point of view of what can we do in the future to limit these murders, and also how do we go about determining in an objective way what kind of dangers are presented by how we're screwing around with children's gender. Are we creating more violence, for example, as a result of that? Are we Are we taking children at a very young and suggestible age and suggesting things that might not occur to them on their own? And then years later, they're in tremendous agony because they're trapped in a new configured body, maybe a body that's been mutilated. And those percentages have gone up. And then what is the issue of what is there? Maybe not every person who's transgender, but is there among a large percentage of people who are transgender this illness that I only just found out about? But it does say, and depending on what you read, there are some pretty frightening statistics about how many transgender people suffer from gender dysphoria, like most illnesses, which can be relatively mild, I guess, to catastrophic and fatal in terms of suicide. So since we are not allowed to evaluate transgenderism objectively because we're under a tyranny of them, if you say anything questionable, you're accused of being a bigot, a murderer, a creep, a bum. You should be fired from your job, and some of them say you should be killed. And they did yesterday. And they're going to have a big rally for vengeance. Who are they going to take vengeance on? Who do they take vengeance on? It's one of their people that did the killing. Who do they take vengeance on? I think they'd be a little understated after what happened. Just out of respect for the families that lost their loved ones. But they don't care. They obviously don't care. To have a rally built around vengeance now. I mean, can you imagine if that was a white kid and we didn't know why he did it, but there were a certain number of black people that were killed by this white kid. And we didn't know why he did it, but there was this manifesto that he had written that explained why he did it. And this weekend, one of the big groups that he was a member of was holding a rally for vengeance. I just want you to make it neutral now. What would happen? You know what would happen. This would be covered in every newspaper. There'd be a million cameras there. And the kid would be condemned. And it might turn out that the manuscript has a bunch of cartoons in it. But nobody would remember that afterwards. I mean, the minute they found out at Christmas time, the guy who took the car and killed all those people wanted to kill white people, forgot that one. You can't do that. You can't do that and create a safe country. You got to get to crime, and you got to deal with crime objectively. It's the only way, because if you don't, people get killed. You got the wrong reason for crime, you don't solve them, and people get killed. You got the right reasons, and you got them figured out, and you can save a lot of lives. Take it from me. But you've got to have a really objective mind, free of prejudice, to do that. You can't go cover up because it talks about transgender. And you can't go exaggerate because it talks about white this and that. I mean, when the Attorney General tells you that the worst threat to America is white supremacy, you know he's lying, right? For political reasons. Just look at the people that were killed last year in America and the records that were set in American cities, and go figure out how many white supremacists did it. And then go figure out who actually did it. That's an objective analysis, as opposed to a crooked, dishonest political analysis. And that's the way you're going to solve crime, with an objective analysis. Because when you don't, you're striking out at the wrong things, and crime just gets worse. Well, we'll have more on this tomorrow. Maybe we'll have more, and therefore it was fortuitous that we didn't go into great detail on this other situation, on the terrible situation in Nashville. But we'll see. I mean, isn't it interesting? This indictment, which is protected by criminal laws against being revealed, is revealed by a district attorney's office, which tells you that they're a dishonest district attorney's office, except they're the district attorney's office who have indicted the president for crimes that don't exist. On the other hand, nobody's leaking the manifesto. I don't know that I don't know that it'd be a crime to leak it. I don't think it is. It's not surrounded with grand jury secrecy. Police could put it out tomorrow. There's no criminal law that prohibits the release of that manifesto. They release things like that all the time. Grand jury is a special situation where it's surrounded by criminal laws that protect both the fact of an indictment until it's revealed and the testimony. The only person who can tell you what's going on in the grand jury is the witness. Witness has a perfect right to tell you what's going on in the grand jury, but nobody else. Or the witness's lawyer if the witness says it to the lawyer. So that's a little education in the law. Thank you. Pray for America. Pray for America, and also pray that the souls of our fellow citizens open up to God again. That we open ourselves to God. That we rid ourselves of the narcissistic view that we're God and know everything. Because if you know how the world begins, come tell me. Give me the scientific evidence of how the world began. So as Pascal would say, the better bet is to bet on God. You're darn right it is. I think the minute we started throwing God out of this country based on communism, is the minute this country started going down. We need God. Our rights come from God. We're a country that always thought we were favored somewhat by God. Well, to be favored by God, you have to love God. I think we do really, really well to bring God back into America. Not force him back, but not force him out. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow night. God bless America, and I'll see you at 3 tomorrow on WABCRadio.com.